On the final rest day of the candidates, a very special event took place in Madrid. There's a park called the El Retiro Park over there, and some of the top players in the world went there to play chess. You had Judit Polgar, the strongest female chess player ever, taking on Magnus Carlsen, who had also traveled, the strongest chess player in the world right now, the world champion. And they decided to play against each other a 3 minute each game, a blitz game. And let's have a look at this game that took place. Judith is playing with the white pieces and opens the game with 1e4. Magnus responds with Sicilian, knight to f3, e6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight c6. So this has been played at the candidates and Magnus follows that with a6. Bishop e3, Judith plays her bishop out. And Magnus asks Judith, like, what are you going to do? Some modern theory? And Judith says, no, I'm old school. And she puts her bishop out on e3. Queen c7, we are now in Taimanov territory. Queen d2, knight to f6 and pawn to f3. Bishop e7, long castles, b5, g4. So at this point, Judith was playing based on her feel. She did not recollect much of theory, which generally happens with players who are not, professional players. And knight takes, bishop takes, and now bishop came to b7. So this line is considered to be quite okay for black. And at this point, Anish Giri was in the crowd, and he said to Magnus that this is a topical line, and Magnus also recollected it, and they said a few moves which were g5, knight h5 and bishop e5. The reason why this is relevant is because this is such a recurring theme in this opening, whereby you attack the queen with a piece and deflect it so that you can win the pawn here. This is not a checkmate, but this is a check. King b1, queen b8. There are close to 54 games in this position and it's around equal. Like after rook d7, queen takes b7, rook b7 and so on. But Judith now pushed her pawn to e5. This is a very interesting moment. If this was a classical game, this move would have received a kind of an interesting symbol because Judith is sacrificing a pawn. But in this particular game, she hadn't seen Magnus's next move. But still, Magnus should have gone knight d5, which was the safer way to continue. And I think he's doing pretty well. Let's say knight e4. You can already castle, but you can also go knight b4, putting pressure on a2 and c2. But instead, Magnus went for knight takes g4, which was very tempting. And, you can't really take the knight because of bishop takes h1. So at this point, Judith began to think, and she did what she does the best, which is to attack. She went rook g1. Now the knight is attacked. And I think at this point, Carlsen thought for a bit and he said that I can't take on f3 because of bishop g2. It's an interesting position still, and there are many lines. For example, bd1 is possible here with bishop a8, let's say knight e5, rook d1 and short castle, when black has 3 pawns for a piece. But this should be better for white in some way. The other way is to take the pawn on h2 so that your bishop is protected. A line could go queen f4 and then bishop d1, bishop a8. Now the bishop is hanging, the knight is hanging, so you play bishop g4, sort of blocking the g file. Queen h2 makes sense. And now an important move, just so that you can find it black to play. You should always remember that when there is this pin here like this, the pawn cannot move. So not f6, but actually f5. So there is no en passant. The bishop is nicely protected and the position is complicated. So here knight h6 was played by Magnus. He wanted to put his knight on h6. So now a question to you, what do you play here as white to play? I think Judith understood this point very quickly, that she should not let this knight get reactivated. So rook takes g7, which is a very natural move, is met with knight f5, and surprisingly this rook is trapped. You can't go here, you can't go here. If you go to g4, I'm taking on f3, attacking both the rooks. You can't go on g3, the knight takes it. On g2 is the same thing, taking on f3, attacking d1 and g2. And if you go to g1, which is a possible move, then I take here, and bishop c5, and rook is lost. So you're losing the rook in all the lines. That's why not take the pawn, and the two moves which are very good here, both are dealing with the knight coming to f5. So bishop h3 or bishop d3. So I can put my bishop on d3, stopping knight f5. Bishop f8 had to be played, because if you went castles, then there is already rook takes g7 business. After takes, there is rook g1 and queen h6. It's already mate on g7 and h7. So he had to go bishop f8, and now Judith went bishop e4. Well, you can take here on e4, but then a very powerful move would be fe4, now completely dominating the knight and not letting it come into the game. So Magnus decided not to do that. A decent move here would have been bishop c6, preparing queen b7 or something of that sort, rook c8. Or a b4 is possible, but after knight e4, knight a4, I feel like this square is weak and white has tremendous compensation for the pawn. Magnus here blundered with rook c8, and he said that, yeah, I don't want to castle in this position, but he forgot about a very important trick here, white to play and win. Can you find it? Judith instantly played bishop b6, which shows how tactically she is still very alert. And unfortunately, you cannot pick up this bishop. It's queen d7 mate. As we saw that theme, that was an opening theory, which Magnus simply forgot. That was at least playable, because the king, when you take on e5 here, king had the f8 square. But in this particular case, after bishop b6, the problem is that you don't even have that square. It's just a mate. So he played bishop e4, but after bishop c7, bishop c6, bd6, Magnus was of the opinion that he resigned here. And then something very nice happened. At that point, Judith asked Magnus, would you like to play another game? And Magnus said, no, it's much better for the story this way, which is very nice of Magnus. And also Judith was such a wonderful person. She was, all the time, of course, these are great players. They're not going to boast or anything. In the end, Judith did write a very nice post on Facebook, which says, Madrid is brilliant. I arrived. By the way, she was commentating online for Chess24, but she arrived in Madrid on 2nd, or maybe she arrived on 2nd July, I think. And she says, I have arrived and found myself immediately in the middle of a magical event. The Retiro Park Chess Club has a charming building. This is the post that she had made. And she says, the Retiro Park Chess Club has a charming building with plenty of outdoor chess tables around where you can play chess even as late as 2 a.m. And who was playing there with locals when I arrived? It was chess world champion Magnus Carlsen. Fascinating. It was fascinating, super cool. Could it have been more? Yes, we played a blitz game 3 versus 3 with Magnus and I won. What a day. Well, you can check out this video on a couple of channels that is there already. I hope you liked the game analysis. And this was actually the game between the strongest male chess player in the world versus the strongest female chess player. So very nice memory overall for the chess world. This is Sagar Shah signing off. Bye-bye.